oftentimes the riders are coming in, they're still sweaty, and it's got to be a jersey that's easy to put on when you're standing in front of millions of people and watching on TV. So the Giro version of the Sanremo S speed suit. So it's got the latest construction in the sleeves and then the aerodynamic striping on the legs. So really maximum for speed. Aero race jersey without the bull aero. We're talking about a total system CDA drop of what we saw in the wind tunnel of about 6%. Maybe on TV it looks quite similar to what other teams are, but we've of course tested all the products that are on the market now, and then we started our own development because even slight differences in those fabrics of how high the ribs are, the spacing, it can have quite a bit of difference in the results. So a lot of times it happens between 35, 40, 45, 50, up to 60K an hour. So a lot of the work we do is really combining the right fabric with the right shape, focus at the right speed.
Buongiorno everyone, and welcome to the second episode of the Castelli podcast, brought to you by the people behind the brand and its game-changing innovations in cycling apparel. I'm Søren Jensen, marketing manager here at Castelli, and in this second episode from the 108th edition of the Giro d'Italia, we will unpack what's inside the classification leader jersey's bag, from aero clothing to foul weather gear, and highlight the pieces that make a real difference in a pro rider's clothing arsenal. We will also take a closer look at Castelli's aerodynamic product line, engineered for peak race day performance, yet designed to strike that perfect balance between speed and all-day comfort. At Castelli, innovation isn't just a buzzword, it's who we are, it's part of our DNA. For decades, our mission has been to help cyclists ride faster, go further, and stay comfortable in any condition. And a big part of that comes from pro rider feedback, wind tunnel testing, and our in-house testing culture, where a launch ride can end with a stop in the sample room to fine-tune the next generation of gear. So now, without further delay, let's jump into this week's episode with Castelli's brand manager Steve Smith, the man who helped shape the brand's modern identity and led some of its iconic product breakthroughs over the past 2 decades. Let's welcome Steve to the show. Welcome to the Castelli podcast. Thanks for joining me here on the Castelli podcast.
Yeah, happy to be back.
It's been almost a year now. I think the last one was around the Giro a year ago.
That could be, yeah.
We used to do this more often, but we got something exciting coming up soon also on the GABA R with Steve and Kasper Askren. That was recorded last year also at the wind tunnel, but we get into that in our next episode. First, let's dive into the second episode of the Giro d'Italia and some of the products and innovative firsts that Castelli has introduced during its history. And on this episode, we also do a deep dive on aerodynamics here with the man himself, Steve Smith, who's been spending a lot of days and weeks, months throughout your career in the wind tunnel.
About 45 days, I think. It's a lot of time.
It's a lot of time.
Yeah.
And as we know, that Castelli already started conducting aero testing in the mid-70s, and it was actually recognized with the Discopolo Award by the Italian newspaper Corriere dello Sport in 1979 for having revolutionized cycling clothing in a futuristic way. And then fast forward to the newer era of Castelli. I'm talking 2006. And also, Steve, when you entered the Castelli world maybe a year before,
Yep.
Coming up with the first aero jersey, the split second, and all the way up to today, where we have the 8th generation of aero jerseys. So there's so much there. We're going to go into some of that, all the aero talk and testing, and also some handful tips and some low-hanging fruits for all the people listening to this podcast, where they can gain a lot, spending not too much money compared to bike equipment and more. But let's first pick your brain and everything about what aero and foul weather products are being supplied to the classification leaders. And let's dive into what's in the pink jersey bag.
Yeah, so here we are in the Giro. As we're recording this at the end of the first week, and fortunately they've had just a little bit of rain, but actually the amount of kit done for the classification leaders actually goes to all the classifications, not just the pink jersey. So, of course, there's the classic race jersey, but That's just a small part of the overall supply now. So there's a completely separate jersey, which we use for the awards presentation on the podium. Maybe you don't notice that it's different, but we actually put a lot of engineering into that jersey because to make it look nicer, we wanted to put a nice long sleeve jersey, but oftentimes the riders are coming in, they're still sweaty, and it's got to be a jersey that's easy to put on when you're standing in front of millions of people and watching on TV. So we worked hard to find the fabric that's the right amount of stretch and it slides even over wet skin. We made it a fit that's a little bit looser than you would use on a bike, so it's not a tight to body fit. And then we gave it more space through the upper body so that when you're standing, as opposed to riding, that it fits right. Made it a little bit longer on the front, and then also a zipper that's easy to put on. When we started with the Giro, we looked at what was happening in other races where a guy stands there and somebody puts the jersey on him, and it looks like a chef's outfit, with the zipper in the back, and then somebody has to close it up. That's awkward. So we thought these are adults, so they can put on their own jersey, and I think it's nice when they really close it up themselves, and it's a special feeling for these guys. So the podium jersey is a special jersey done for each day. And of course, the race jersey, which is the latest generation of our most Aero jersey ever, the Aero Race 8S, which I think we'll talk about more in depth in a bit. And then they also have a speed suit that's made for road racing. And that suit is a special version of our normal race suits because we've engineered it with a little bit more stretch because, of course, when we're outfitting a custom team or a pro team, we can everyone can try on that suit to make sure it's just right. If somebody needs a custom fit for a pro, we can do that. But when we're in the Giro d'Italia, really it's they put on that if they take the jersey that day, they try the suit on. We already have to put the transfer on it, and they're going to be racing in just a few hours, really. So we make those suits so that they're more stretchy and they can fit more body types. Because sometimes you have a guy who's skinny up on top and has big legs. Some guys are normal on top, but quite skinny legs. And so the fact that you have different fits there, it has to fit everyone. So that's a tricky part. And then as we get into the cold weather, because the Giro is famously unpredictable for its weather. So you have everything from the cool weather starts. So you have arm warmers that match to the leader's jersey. You have a lightweight vest that matches to the leader's jersey. And then for worse weather conditions, there's a short sleeve gaba and then a little long sleeve perfetto jacket with the graphic of the team.
So with the transfer.
Yeah. A notable exception to that this year with the pink jersey supplier coming in a bit late. We didn't have time to make those jackets with all of the sponsor logos. So you might have seen Mats Pedersen racing with the Gaba R. There's a special Giro edition we did with that. So I think Mats is happy.
He's all about Aero and going as Aero as possible, and all those marginal games also, tinkling with his bike setup and everything. So
one note about that is that it's not that the leader every day gets a suitcase full of garments. So the foul weather equipment gets given out if there's a chance of foul weather the next day. So like last year, Pogačar didn't end the race with 20 Gabas done. Just receive them for the rainy days, and then of course, only for the time trials. Of course, they're given a time trial suit.
Of course, last year, then at least for the Maglia Rosa, Castelli didn't have to then supply that many jerseys since Poggi was in the pink for so long. But how many pieces are being delivered to RCS or the Giro d'Italia organizers?
Actually, a funny note about Pogačar is he did actually every day receive a new podium jersey and also a race jersey. So he collected a number of those, but he did almost the entire race in, I think, which was the very first pink jersey he received. So he washed it every night.
Wow.
Yeah, so he had new jerseys to wear every time, but I don't know if he was just out of superstition or what, but he liked that jersey. So You can tell the difference on some of the jerseys. There was a name tag beneath the leader's transfer that says Pogacar, but the one he wore most of the time, there's no name tag on it because it wasn't actually transferred on that day. So, but no, the amount of equipment that's given to RCS, it has to really cover any possible combination of body sizes. So, oftentimes in the early stages, you might have a Jonathan Milan who's a big size L.
Yeah.
Fortunately, he's actually a size XL, but he likes to wear his things tight. So we had to cover from a Jonathan Milan for the early stages down to the skinniest, extra small guys. So in calculating those sizes, I mean, the Jonathan Milan is not going to win the Giro. So you don't need to make 21 size L jerseys or speed suits. So that quantity is reduced. As you hit the mountains, the bigger guys are going to fall behind. So there's really a quantity of size small, which is typically the size of your leader of the Giro or the winner of the Giro. There'll be enough of those to cover the entire race. And then the bigger sizes will be a reduced quantity.
And then on the Ciclamino, I assume there will be more like the bigger sizes.
Yep.
Or talking bigger here, medium, maybe large, but medium sizes, yeah.
And then as we get into the climber's jersey, two of the size larges, and then that by the time they go over the first real hill, it's going to be a skinny climber.
So talking about the road suit that we were mentioning here earlier, what model are we talking about here? Since it's the same also with the TT suit with the body paint, because with all that aero testing that Castelli is conducting every year, and also supplying the Italian Olympic teams and some of the best time trialists like Remco Evenepoel, Olympic time trial gold medalist, are they the same models that as Castelli has in the inline collection, or there are a few tweaks here and there? Because some people might have noticed a little bit of difference if they're paying good attention on television.
Yeah, so the road suit, as I mentioned before, has a little bit more stretch the way it's constructed. But it's the Giro version of the Sanremo S speed suit. So it's got the latest construction in the sleeves, and then the aerodynamic striping on the legs. So really maximum for speed. And then for the TT suit, is the same standard suit that we give to the Soudal guys. And it's not yet in the Castelli collection. It'll be coming in summer 26. So if you look there, you're seeing what's coming into the normal collection in a year from now, or 9 months from now. But it's a speed suit that we specifically developed, trying to make something that was super fast for everyone. Remco, for example, such a unique shape on the bike. It's almost like working with Remco, you have to throw out everything because everything's unique for him. Whereas any rider, if we can dedicate the time and the resources, we can make them faster with something specific for them. But you don't have the time in the Giro. You can't. For the time somebody takes the leader's jersey till they're racing a chrono. It's just a matter of hours sometimes. And so you can't spend 3 days in the wind tunnel with them. So we've tried to make something that really works really well on everyone.
Yeah, which is very important, yeah. How does the rider position and fit influence the overall aerodynamic performance compared to equipment alone? So thinking about Remco, as you said, and...
with the shape of the rider, the flatness of the back, how narrow their shoulders are, how closed up they are in the front can have a big impact on the aerodynamics of the clothing. So we avoid those things that can maybe be detrimental on certain shapes of riders. So if someone is a little bit more upright or a little bit wider through the shoulders, we do that. And so we try to make something that it gives those interventions we need, especially through the shoulder and forearm area, and the rest of it is quite smooth.
Yeah. Do you also, when you go and do the wind tunnel testing, because that's something we'll have to do a deep dive on a future episode, what is happening behind the scenes and Castelli's protocol when we go to the wind tunnel, because I know it's you usually spend from preparation, getting in early in the morning till the evening, like 12 hours there, and just have takeaway pizzas coming in for a quick break while riders are getting changed or new riders are coming in and different body type and everything. But do you also test and optimize gear for specific position? Now you mentioned like TT, but also versus sprinting. Now with Ethan Hayter, we got PoliMI. I mean, we got a lot of good sprinters also on Soudal team, and upright position when you're at the tunnel with the different gears, both road suits and the GABA, for example.
Yeah, so clearly if you're doing a TT suit, we're doing it in a TT position. And now we have a cool new project with Tim earlier for a sprint suit that is quite promising. And then the road suits are of course made for road position, but since it's optimized really for those key moments when you're going maximum at 110%, it's that we focus them more on the maximum position, maximum speed positions, and also the speed you're doing. So 60 and even we're even tested above that, so we can see how it works at super high speed.
So where is that sweet spot when it comes to the speed of aerodynamic games? Where does that actually start from?
Yeah, it's interesting on clothing. A lot of people don't know this, but the shapes of riders and the texture of clothing just by chance happens to be, because a surface covering like this can be quite bad aerodynamically at a certain speed, and then as the speed goes up, that texture can help the air to detach the flow from the surface. And so if you do a speed sweep in a wind tunnel on a cylinder, for example, you can see a clear point at which the coefficient of drag, the CDA, will drop off, as it's called a criticality, when the air really detaches from the flow of the air, detaches from the surface.
Yeah.
And quite often with the fabrics we use in cycling, that criticality will happen around speeds that we normally use. It'd be easy if that criticality happened at 100 kilometers an hour or at 10, but a lot of times it happens between 35, 40, 45, 50, up to 60K an hour. So a lot of the work we do is really combining the right fabric with the right shape, focus at the right speed. And the art of it is really quite interesting, because if you take what we do for the Italian national team, for the team pursuit, that they're really good at that, but it's a very defined speed they're going to go at. They get up to speed within one lap. So in 20 seconds they're up to speed, then they spend the next 3 minutes and a little bit more.
Yeah.
It's crazy. At close to 70K an hour. So you make a suit that's very, very good at 70K an hour, and you don't really care what it does above or below that. Whereas with a road suit, they're spending a little time in even 30K an hour going up the hill, but their aerodynamics not as quite as important. But they're spending time at all kinds of speeds, and then when the race is really under pressure and blowing apart, they're going up to 60K an hour. So you might have it optimized so that it can make the difference at the maximum speed, but you're also checking it as good across the whole range of speeds.
Yeah.
So it's tricky, yeah.
It's very tricky, because also how significant are the aerodynamic gains, in practical terms for amateurs versus professional cyclists? But this is basically what you're saying here.
Yeah.
And then you also still have when rolling hills, or you're going up in the mountains, because I think also that spot between also the gradient was that 6-7% when it comes to gradient going uphill, where aerodynamics no longer count versus lightness.
Josh Portner would say it always counts. So,
well, we know Josh, yeah. So,
no, I imagine. Even down above. It always counts, but at some point, it becomes less and less significant.
Yeah. So it's interesting what you said earlier also about the road aero suit, because also with Soudal Quickstep, they have multiple suits for also different conditions. And here, this road suit that we're supplying to them, we're giving them more stretch, fitting more body types, and being like the perfect suit for everything, for every race day. That most of Castelli's innovation trickles down from World Tour racing and all the way down through the line of products in our collection. What are some of the lowest hanging fruits for aero gains within the Castelli collection?
Yeah, so The first thing is that, especially your jersey, that it fit properly, right? And what that means, it should be fairly close to body. If there's that doesn't mean though that it needs to be absolutely like you need to squeeze into it, because the little folds in the fabric, counterintuitively, a lot of times they don't really seem to cause a detriment.
Okay.
Because I mean, you would think that there's like, first thing you have to do is get rid of all the folds, and that's not really true. If a fold is happening in the right place, it could actually be quite beneficial. It's a sort of a trip strip. If it's in the wrong area, then it's not really helping you. But if the fabric is flapping around in the wind, then you're losing a lot of aerodynamic drag. Fortunately, when the jersey is fitting close to skin, that's when it's going to work the best at keeping you comfortable, wicking away the moisture, not getting too cold, not getting too hot. So really that close to body fit is optimum. A lot of time, if you get the product, the jersey or the speed suit that's fitting super, super tight, you don't really see it. That means that the fabric stretches out more and there gets more space between the yarns on the surface of the fabric. And it's so small that you don't really see it, but the wind sees it. And so you don't want something that's too tight either. So that, where it's fitting you perfectly, where there's no more fabric floating around, that's a perfect happy medium. So the fit is the first thing. And then as you go into our aerodynamic jerseys, I mean, they're really optimized for getting the best aerodynamics, but we've built them thinking you still need to go out and ride your bike. So it's still made with fabrics that are super comfortable and stretchy, easy to fit, with pockets that function, zippers that function. You can open and close it for cooling, because it's not just about aerodynamics. You got to keep your motor running well, right? So you got to be able to keep yourself in an optimum operating temperature. So again, first thing is making sure your clothing fits. Moving into the Aero jersey is a big one, for what, 170 euros now for the top of the line, the Aero Race 8S. Or if you like the comfort and look and everything of a speed suit on the road, you can certainly do all your road rides in a Sanremo speed suit. And then one of the coolest ones is popping on the fast feet socks. It's about 2 watts at 40k an hour, just a free speed. And then we do have the fast feet TT booty that's about 3 watts total at 40k an hour. So that would be, of course, that one you have to pull over your shoe, but not a lot of money, and you get a significant amount of speed for it.
When we're thinking about that 75% of the aerodynamic drag is coming from the rider, from the person, and all the rest of the 25% are the equipment, bike, wheels, helmets, and so yeah, that's crazy. And if you look at the numbers, I mean, we all know how much a pair of super high profile Aero carbon wheels they cost, and what you actually get out of it is nothing compared to when it comes to the clothing. No. So one thing we didn't mention here was also the new free Aero Bibshort, which you touched on earlier when talking about the Sanremo 8 speed suit. Tell me a little bit about the free Aero shorts.
Yeah, so here in 2025, we came out with a new updated free Aero short, which has always been our top of the line race short. And the new bit on the short is that we really stepped back and thought about what cyclists want in a race short or a performance short. And it's funny, I mean, even saying a race short, performance short, you think immediately for speed, but I think all of us, first and foremost, that short's got to be super comfortable. Yeah. Right. I mean, a short would have to be incredibly fast to overcome that need for comfort. So we started out with building this. Our goal internally was like, we want to make this as comfortable as our Premio or Espresso shorts. So a lot of work on the patterning and the fit on it. And we did actually develop a new fabric for this that when you touch it and feel it, it's an incredibly soft hand, and just feels so nice both on the skin and to the touch. And then we worked on providing real speed to shorts, and it's an area we've kind of struggled with a bit in the past, because the shorts area, your hips, your legs are in dirty air already, and so it's harder to get meaningful gains there. But we kind of relooked at the question and the whole theory part of how we could make that part of the body better. And so we've added a new texture to the legs that it's kind of cool when your leg is at the top of the pedaling stroke. This texture of the lines is basically in line with the flow of the air, but as your leg goes down, of course your leg changes position in the air, so the texture becomes perpendicular to the flow, so it helps to detach that flow when your leg is down, and it helps to keep that flow laminar when your leg is up. What we found is some real repeatable gains. It's small, but dropping the total CDA of the system by like a 1.5–2%, depending upon the speed, but also becomes really important the yaw, because when you are riding at zeros, really no wind whatsoever, zero yaw, your legs are fully into dirty air, and it doesn't. I mean, we get to even like a 2.5% yaw, which is just a slight side wind. That air coming in on the windward side is hitting your thigh with clean air, and that's when we start to see the significant improvements. So it's something that doesn't really affect the fit, the performance, the comfort, everything of the short. But when you get almost in any condition, you're getting a real aerodynamic gain.
Wow, that's interesting. Cool. And still, riding with the same comfort and doesn't really feel like you're squeezed into something that you don't really want to be.
No, definitely an all-day short. I mean, 7 hours, 8 hours.
Yeah. Which comes with our Progetto X2 seat pad.
Exactly. And then the bib construction we made, the free name partly came from the bib construction, because back when we first did the short, bibs were basically a full second layer on your upper body. And you would see the pros cutting out their bibs just to keep cooler. So this is that really minimalist bib the bib is there only to keep the short up. But then we even put in some nice details. Like it's got that pocket in the lower back. So if you want to put keys or money or whatever you don't want to lose, that when you set out and you never want to have to deal with it, it's easy. It's a great space to put things that you put away at the start of the ride and then you pull it out at the end of the ride.
Yeah, and that's the same pocket as the pros. They put in the race radio, or
pros actually. Yeah, there's another pocket, because that pocket on the regular short is at the lower back, and that the race radios are still thick enough that we like to get those up higher on the back, just so that the reason for that is that when the pros are sticking their hands in their pockets, sometimes they can accidentally touch the buttons if they're touching the radio. So that the reason you see that race radio in the middle of the rider's back is so that they can't get to it.
Can't get to it, yeah. And also when it needs to get in and out of the rear pockets, yeah. So with that aero texture on the side panels of the shorts, how many different prototypes and different aero textures did you guys test in the tunnel? How many runs did you have to do, and how long did it take to get to the point where you found, okay, this is the most performant?
So, I mean, number one, we had this idea of putting the texture, and then we had to figure out how to do it. So we had to do a little bit of clever inventing there, but still we didn't know if it would work. And so not only did we not know if the idea would work, but we didn't know what really the texture should be. So the first round we did 9 totally different textures. It's when you see them, it's like you can really see that we were like doing a hunt and peck on trying to just to validate an idea.
Yeah.
And what we saw immediately is that some of them worked really, really well. Some of them didn't work at all. Even for the first round, it kind of keyed in onto 3 that were really promising. So we did a second round of developing each of those to see what would work in terms of sizing and spacing, where you put it on the shorts. And then from there, in the second round already, we keyed in on the idea of doing these stripes like we've done. But then in the third round was quite a number of variations on stripes, of where you put them, the spacing, the depth, the thickness. Because there's no book that tells you how to do this, right? and unfortunately, I suppose you could do a CFD model in this, but to do all that modeling, that the CFD modeling, especially on textiles, isn't quite to the level that you would really need to be to have like clear results. So it was quicker just to make up shorts and go try them in the wind tunnel.
Yeah. So you rolled in a big clothing rack full of multiple shorts, different textures, and tried them on the same person. And yeah.
And then you have to also repeat because with a person riding a bike in wind tunnel, there's a lot of drag, and you're not just measuring the drag on the short. You're picking up. I mean, if the guy moves even slightly, hasn't pulled his sock all the way up, there's other noise that can affect it. So you're doing multiple runs to get an average of those to verify that what you're seeing is really what you're testing.
And that's why it takes a full day in the tunnel.
Yeah. And it takes weeks to actually prepare all the samples. Yeah, the tunnel is actually the easy part.
Yeah. What I've seen when coming to the tunnel together with you and the rest of the performance engineering team that we have here at Castelli is that you seem to be home. You know, it's like also with the people there, the engineers, they almost like giving you the keys to the tunnel and just let you in. And, you know, I mean, they feel very comfortable working with you. They've worked with you for many years now, but also that the process and everything, how things are just rolling in there. I remember also with Remco's performance coach, Kuhn, when every time he goes in there, when Remco is there, everyone seems to be really relaxed. There's really good atmosphere in there, but everyone are just focused on one thing.
Yeah. I mean, it helps that we've been going there since 2011.
Yeah.
And so, we've known the people for a long time, and we know what the tunnel can do and the data that it should give us. And we've gotten pretty efficient at maximizing the day.
Yeah. Apart from being convenient, because it's the Politecnico is in Milan, so it's 3.5 hour drive from where our headquarters is up in the Dolomites. That wind tunnel compared to San Diego, compared to Geneva, the Friedrichshafen, to Silverstone, some of the other tunnels that you've been to, why is this tunnel so special?
Number one, the setup of the actual tunnel, the wind, quality of the wind actually is something that engineers talk about. I mean, it's got to be really, really constant. And then the setup to hold the bike is really, really good. And then inside the setup that is holding the bike, it's crazy. There's actually 8 different, they call them a balance in aerodynamic terms, but it's basically like a scale, right? When you get on a scale in the bathroom and you see how much you've eaten, it's measuring the weight coming down. Well, here we have scales that are measuring. We're measuring the weight coming down. We're measuring how much is pushing you backwards, how much torsion side to side, rotational. So 8 different axes we're measuring. And what that scale is actually weighing is the force, how much pressure is being put onto it. And then there's an algorithm that takes all that data and tries to, from the force measurements, calculates what's called the coefficient of drag. Of course, we're using a rider that's cycling, and so if you actually see the graph of the force as it's changing, it completely replicates the pedaling motion, so it's bouncing up and down. So we'll take a reading of 20 seconds and take the average of those 20 seconds to come up with an actual bit of data on that. So it's taking in 8 different force measurements over 20 seconds, taking an average of those and calculating out. A CDA is the actual number that it spits out, but it's a very complex formula coming from a lot of data points.
So Steve, before we dive into the Aero race jersey, which we said at the beginning here that we wanted to give a little bit deeper dive on some of the Aero savings, I just want to touch a little bit on or remind all podcast listeners as well that all the pieces that Steve is talking about today, they're also available through a custom program. And we also just opened up for about a month ago, early April, something very exciting on our website called the Speed Shop. So basically the same products, but just gathering. If you go into the castellicycling.com, go to the top menu, you see there are 2 new menus there. One is called Pro Shop, which I'll let you explain, and one is called Speed Shop.
Yeah. So Speed Shop is where we put it together all the products that'll make you faster. So it's easy shopping for speed. The Pro Shop though is something we've put in. It's something we've done kind of informally for a number of years. For a lot of pros, who come to Castelli looking for especially winter and rain clothing, because it's kind of our specialty, and a lot of pro team suppliers maybe their weak point or are not as much of a focus as it is for us. So we've long seen a lot of Castelli jackets in the pro peloton when the rain comes going, or also in training at home. A lot of the pros are training in Castelli gear. Sometimes they black out the logos. But the pro shop now is really a service for professional riders to get the Castelli jackets without any outside logos. So it's the same jacket as the inline Castelli piece that they were buying and canceling out the logos. But we wanted to help some of the pros so they don't get in trouble with their teams or sponsors. So yeah, no, it's cool to see our jackets out there keeping the riders warm and dry in those tough conditions. It's a tough life to be a pro. So
it is a tough life.
We make it a little bit easier.
Oh yeah, especially the early races, and now also with the Giro, as we saw yesterday, that they got rained on heavily, and there were a lot of guys in the new Gaba, but also with Castelli logos I saw there from other teams.
Yeah,
that went out they bought it, but now they can also get it without any logos. And the same likewise for amateurs. If you go on castellicycling.com, you will find the full selection there of products. So let's talk about the Aero Race 8S jersey. And a little bit again of what you already mentioned on the free Aero shorts, like what role do seam placements, panel shapes, aero strips, and fabric textures play in reducing drag? And maybe with that, we can talk also about the Aero Race jersey and what it actually makes of, marginal gains. What is the outcome? Where do you go and shape those watts?
Yeah. So yeah, let's maybe take that in different pieces. The seam placement is the first one you mentioned, and seam placements are a little bit tricky because a seam, of course, it can be quite flat where it won't have too much impact, but a seam typically is causing interruption to the airflow, and with an interruption to the airflow in the perfect spot can quite help the aerodynamics. But if it's a little bit outside of the perfect location, it can be quite detrimental. So typically what we're trying to do, because a cyclist is moving around on the bike, so they're not always in the same shape as they cut into the wind. Also, cyclists, sometimes when they put on their jersey or their suit, they kind of do it quickly and they don't always adjust so that the sleeves are lying perfectly. And just the reality of how people wear clothing means that you can't really count on a seam really falling in the exact perfect spot. So typically we're trying to get the seams kind of out of the critical areas for the flow. Or like in the case of the Aero Race, there's a seam kind of in the middle of the shoulder that's put there because shoulders are fairly easier position because it's going to be it's a more gradual curve. So that seam there can generally be helpful in detaching the air. And then the fabrics, like each fabric for each area of the body is studied to give the maximum aerodynamic gains. But making a race jersey or a race suit is not just about the aerodynamics. Like the Aero Race 8S has this ribbed fabric on the front of the sleeves. That fabric, just the way it's made, is a little bit warmer than a normal jersey fabric. And so on the back side of the sleeve, we put a mesh that compensates to that. And when you wear it, some of the early samples we'd done with the ribbed fabric all the way around. And the ribs weren't really doing anything for us on the back of the sleeve in terms of aerodynamics. But you could just feel it, especially on a warmer day, it felt quite hot. So we just modified the sleeve. So if you look at it from straight on, what the wind sees is just ribs. But that mesh on the back is noticeable about how much cooler the jersey is. And then the main body material, fabric was developed especially for the body, and it's really kind of a cool fabric because it's super stretchy, so it's really comfortable. The yarn content is such that it does a pretty good job of keeping you dry. Of course, we have to put some lycra in to make it fit, but it's only a 7% lycra content, so it's really good moisture management. And then it's got a good amount of body to hold its shape. So it's kind of, and then the smoothness of it is top level of aerodynamics. So we've, possible perhaps to make something slightly more aerodynamic, but we'd lose a lot of that overall function to it. So
comfort.
Yeah, we're at 99% of the aerodynamics with a really high level of overall function. And then the last thing I'd say on that is it's actually a UPF 30 fabric. So that means that only 1/30th of the UV rays are coming through. So it's blocking 97% of the UV rays. So it's even that helps to keep you cooler because the warming rays of the ultraviolet rays aren't actually hitting your body.
Yeah.
So it's really kind of an alchemy mix of, putting everything together to make pure gold.
And also a favorite everyday jersey even, not only the race day jersey. And think about also the pros that have to go out and force, right through every conditions. And even the hot summer days in July, you still feel comfortable. And also you got the rear pockets. I felt that myself. I mean, they're fully support. They holds up everything. I mean, they just stay put. I mean, and keeps everything in place. So
it's funny because it wasn't that many years ago that for the pros, they had racing jerseys and training jerseys that were made to be more comfortable. But now it's the fastest thing we've ever done for racing, but it's also completely comfortable for training. Now it's just a jersey.
Yeah. Definitely, guys, go and check out the products that Steve he mentioned here today. I will also drop a link in the podcast notes that you can click on, and you can go to both the Speed Shop, Pro Shop, and all the other products, Sanremo 8S suit and the Aero Race 8 jersey and free shorts and more. Steve, before we wrap up this episode, it's been amazing. Let's talk a little bit about what are those aero gains if you compare to, like for the Aero Race jersey and the Sanremo compared to the previous versions.
Mm-hmm. Interesting thing here is that the aero gains compared to the previous generation is pretty significant if we just take aero suit to aero suit. What helped on the previous generation is that if you put the Bolero base layer underneath, the combination of the suit with the Bolero was very, very, very good. But you had to use the 2-layer solution. And so where we are, depending upon the speed and the athlete and the tests and everything, we're very similar levels of aerodynamics compared to the Bolero suit or the 2-layer solution, but we're doing it with a 1-layer solution. So it's significantly more comfortable, better in hotter weather. You don't always have to dress with the 2 layers. So it's basically you grab it out, you put it on, and you're aero all the time. So, the overall aerodynamics is levels that, significantly higher than we were a few years ago, but we just taken it and made it that much easier to use.
That's also something I know that came from maybe some of the pros, one of the best in the game, Remco Evenepoel, because I remember also him telling you that with the Bolero.
Yeah. Especially Remco, he never really liked it.
But that was more due to, they just felt constrained.
Yeah, he felt like, it was kind of strange because it's quite stretchy, but he just felt like, of course, his position is so extreme.
Yeah.
But, and then, the 2 layers, it really did add quite a bit of heat to it. So, you're seeing this kind of an aerodynamics that the more advanced thing is that this 1-layer solution, you're getting all the benefits of the 2-layer solution, but in a 1-layer if it's done right. But the fabric you see in our 1-layer, maybe on TV it looks quite similar to what other teams are, but we've of course tested all the products that are on the market now, and then we started our own development because even slight differences in those fabrics of how high the ribs are, the spacing, it can have quite a bit of difference in the results. So the one that we did, it was done over multiple wind tunnel sessions to find really that perfect mix for the speeds we're looking at for the way the Garmin is constructed. So it's a little bit different than what in fact, it's a fabric we developed exclusively for us.
Yeah. As we have seen with a lot of other Castelli innovations in the past, that it usually takes the rest of the industry a few more years to pick up on, exactly what Castelli introduced, or when Castelli is already going in different directions, maybe. So, but With the Aero Race jersey, I keep coming back to that one. So in CDA terms, what are the Aero savings?
Yeah, so it depends on what we're comparing it to, but compared to last year's Aero Race jersey without the Bolero, we're talking about a total system CDA drop of what we saw in the wind tunnel of about 6%, which is insane.
It's insane, yeah.
Okay, but careful note on that is that when we see for example, a 3% drop in CDA, sounds like, shit, cool, I go 3% faster. Well, it's not quite like that because of the way aerodynamics works. Your aerodynamic drag is equal to the square of your speed. So your aerodynamic drag goes up exponentially. So as a rough rule of thumb, if we see a 3% drop in CDA, that translates into a 1% increase in speed. Okay, so when we see a 6% drop in CDA, 1/3 of that means that with this Aero Race jersey compared to last year's, about 2% faster, but that's last year's without the Bolero. Okay, so if you're comparing no Bolero,
yeah,
you're 2% faster. If you're comparing to last year's with the Bolero, you're going about the same speed, but with greater convenience, less money, and better comfort. So it's better in that way. And then, of course, as I say this, I think most people listening will say, sweet, I'll use the new one with the Bolero and I'll get all the gains. We've tested that too. And it's not like those are cumulative. So no. Since you already have the aerodynamic shapes in the new jersey, adding a Bolero underneath it, we've tested it to being neutral to slightly negative. But the slightly negative data result we saw was kind of within the noise of the wind tunnel. So we can I think it can be quite sure to say that it's not really giving you a benefit. I'm not sure if I could say it's really causing a detriment, but there's no reason to do it.
Now. See, before we wrap up this episode, I got 2 last questions for you. One is probably something that you might not, let's see if you want to uncover something here, but what are the next frontiers in aero clothing? How do you see it?
It's funny because I think where we are today with the new shorts, with the new jersey, we've given some really nice gains in really usable aerodynamics, and so we've kind of hit another plateau where I think we've optimized some both existing and new technologies really to get it at quite a high level. And so, yeah, now it's a bit challenging that we got to go back and sit down and think about how we're going to get to that next steep curve to get to the next plateau. So in terms of aerodynamics, for us, it's a forever ongoing challenge of getting to a higher level. If we're speaking about pro racing specifically, where we are right now is really optimizing things for individual riders. So there's definitely a development where we're getting better and better on that. I think eventually that'll give us also tools or ideas that can be brought to as a benefit for everyone. But we're kind of at a strange position now. Like we've hit that plateau, and now we've got to think of the next step, and it's probably going to come from the work we're doing with individual athletes at the very, very top level.
But it's been like that since first time you went to the wind tunnel.
Yeah.
In 2006?
Our first wind tunnel test was in 2006. And then it was easy because everything you put in the wind tunnel was better. And so now you can go with more specific ideas. You go to the wind tunnel with a bit more thought behind it. You think you know more about what should work. But that's the other thing we're doing now is we've reached a higher level that we're having to go back to some of the ideas we had years ago that we maybe dismissed because they didn't seem to work. But in a lot of cases, we're finding cases now where it didn't work before because we didn't really know how to use it.
Yeah.
Even when I talked about shorts, we've tested shorts years ago that we weren't doing so much testing with yaw angles back then. And now that we think about how the wind actually hits the shorts, it made a lot of sense that we weren't seeing much gain in zero yaw. But that's because we were doing the testing wrong. And a lot of things in life, afterwards they seem so obvious, but when you're there in the moment, maybe you don't really realize it. So yeah, but we're not done.
No. Never stopping here. What is the average speed you do the test? Is that 40 kilometers an hour? Or how do you set it? I mean, it depends what you're testing. If it's a sprinter suit, you would not test at 40K.
Yeah.
But let's say like the Aero jersey, but also when we go into some of the foul weather pieces.
Yeah. So almost all of our testing we're doing now is at a sweep of speeds. So back in 2007, we tested at 40 kilometers an hour because that was a high speed, or that was a normal speed back then. Now it's like it's relaxed. It's a recovery day almost for the pros. But depending on if we're doing something kind of more for a commercial piece that's going for more normal piece, or if it's something like when we do Remco's suit, his TT suit, we're even testing it up to 70K an hour because there are times in the race where he'll hit those speeds on a slight downhill. And so we need to make sure it'll work for that. So depending on the test and who we're doing it for, we'll think about what speeds are most interesting, and then the data that we'll get out will weight it by how important a given speed should be. Like for Remco, the 70K an hour, we have that number, but he's not spending very much of his time at that speed, so we're giving it a much lower weighting in the overall determination if that suit is right. And then, at the very, very highest level, you're actually applying the drag at certain speeds to the expected drag of a course. With the top teams now are simulating what a rider should do at any given point in the course, and a lot of times they're coming up with a prediction within a few seconds of what the rider should finish at. Yeah. It's crazy.
It is crazy, yeah. But it must also be very exciting for you when you sit there and watching the stages unfold on television.
Yeah.
And you know what those guys are wearing. You also know how much those riders have been part of the whole process of nailing the product and making it so much faster.
Yeah. I mean, for sure, it's cool to see the success in that rider and that day. But to me, it's a little bit frustrating too. That it's like what's always been cool for me is like we do that research, but then we bring it so that everybody can benefit. And right now we're at that level where it's made for a person in a particular race, and at some point we got to bring it back so it's good for all of us.
Yeah. Well, Steve, it's been amazing to have you on. It's been so interesting to hear about all the aerodynamics. They didn't even want to go that deep as we went today. I want to keep that for another episode, but it was fantastic. But this is like when talking to you. But I'll promise our listeners, we'll do a deep dive in the future with Steve on a day at the wind tunnel, and also an episode on Soudal Quickstep and AG Insurance Soudal and how much clothing is supplied to the professional teams. Because we have received a couple of emails and DMs on Instagram from people asking about how much clothing we are supplying to and how much to go through also of clothing during a grand tour. So maybe keep that for another episode. But Steve, before we wrap up this second Giro episode, I know that on May 25th, it's going to be the Giro Stage 15. That stage is particularly important to you, the Castelli brand and the company that we work for. Why is that?
And the Giro's going to go right in front of our offices. So,
but before coming to the office, they've got
the biggest climb of the Giro going over Monte Grappa. Then they come by the Castelli offices. Then they finish up in the town of Asiago.
So it's going to be a big day out for the riders with 3,900, almost 4,000 meters of elevation, I think, over 219 kilometers. So guys, May 25th, stay tuned, watch on television, streaming, wherever. You'll be able to see the Castelli headquarters.
At about kilometer 160 then, I think?
I think it's 160, yeah. Because we also have, on that day, we also have the Giro E, which is like they start out from the Castelli headquarters, from a big parking lot, and then riding on e-bikes all the way up to the finish up in Asiago. So there'll be a lot going on. But what's also very interesting here with Stevie said before, when the guys will ride the 26 kilometers of the Monte Grappa from that side, that's actually only a stone throw from your house.
Yep.
And you've been doing that climb so many times.
Kind of tired of it, actually.
But more important also, you've been on the top of Monte Grappa multiple times, early mornings or late evenings, testing already winter product for the coming winter season, trying out new fabrics, getting those cooler temperatures so you know that mountain by heart.
Yeah.
Now, so yeah. No, it's going to be an interesting one. So yeah, guys, stay tuned May 25th. Make sure to tune in to the Giro d'Italia live coverage. And then, Steve, thanks for taking the time again.
Thanks, Ryan.
And for all the listeners here, if you're watching this on YouTube or listen to it on Spotify and Apple Podcast, go on YouTube or on Spotify and leave a comment of your favorite Castelli Aero product. And after the first week, after the Giro has finished, we will give away one signed Maglia Rosa. We will random pick a winner from some of those comments. So leave a comment there with your favorite Castelli Aero product or also a bit that you like the most here from this episode. So, thanks again. Stay tuned and see you next week.
Thanks.